Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Youthman. Today, as you can see, I'm not in my home theater, but I'm in my friend Scott's home theater up here in Ocala, Florida, as part of the Florida Home Theater Tour. In this video, we're going to show you what you can accomplish if you have a small room. Scott's room is only 12 foot by 13 in a bedroom setup, but he's got a massive 120-inch screen, an 18-inch subwoofer up front, as well as dual 15s in the back. And to top it off, this entire theater room is seriously themed out in the Hogwarts theme from Harry Potter. Now, before we jump into the video, I want to give a big thanks to today's sponsor, Silver Ticket. Silver Ticket has been around since the 1980s, offering a huge selection of projection screens at extremely affordable prices. Now, whether you're looking for a fixed frame from 80 inches to 220 inches, a curved screen for maybe a dedicated home theater, an ALR screen for a room with a lot of ambient light, a portable outdoor screen for a neighborhood block party, or if you're handy and you want to build your own frame, you can purchase screen fabric up to 425 inches. Silver Ticket screens are simple to install, extremely affordable, and they look absolutely fantastic. Visit their website at silverticketproducts.com. I'll also have links to several of their screens down in the description below, so be sure to check them out after this video. All right, Scott, thanks so much for inviting me to come over and check out your incredible home theater. Man, this is pretty unique. I've never seen somebody take really a small bedroom, 12 foot by 13 foot, what are we, 8 foot ceilings?
8 foot ceilings, yeah. And
take that and turn it into really a dedicated room with theater seats, AVR, projector. We're going to talk about all of your equipment. We're going to talk about your acoustic panels, of course, the decorations, and you've done all of this yourself, man. So super excited about this video. So those of you out there watching this video and you're thinking, man, I don't have a 20 by 30 foot room, this is the video for you because we've got a lot in store. Well, Scott, I just want to kind of go around the room and let's talk about the different aspects of it. And then at the end, I'd love to ask you some questions about your journey through building out this room. And so up front, you've got a projection screen. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we have it's a Silver Ticket. It was a 120-inch screen. I've upgraded the material 3 times. So Silver Ticket's pretty good about you can order just the screen material from them if you already have the frame. So originally I was in another house and I had just the white, just the regular, not the acoustic transparent.
Sure.
And then when we moved here, I went everything in walls because we're in a small space, so everything had to be in wall speakers in order to make it work.
Sure, and maximize your space.
Right, yeah, because tower speakers would be halfway out into the room here. So when I moved into here, I went with I think it's their WAB material. It's acoustic transparent.
Sure.
And several months later, they came out with their newest, latest, greatest, the WVS material. I think's what it is. It's a little tighter weave, a little brighter, better gain to it. And I've been really happy with it. It's definitely an upgrade over the WAB, which the WAB is very good. It's a really good material, but it doesn't have. They claim the same gain, but the WVS material was instantly noticed, a little more pop to the picture, a little brighter. So that was definitely an upgrade. I've been really happy with the screen, and that's one of the things in the room. I have no plans to upgrade. I'm perfectly happy with the picture that it puts out. And
gotcha. Now, what kind of drew you to Silver Ticket?
Originally was the price. It was just kind of getting into it. I really didn't know a lot about it, and it's like, how much difference can there be between a $300 screen and a $1,000 screen? Because when I first bought my projector, I was throwing it on the wall like a lot of people do, and it looked fine to me. So I was like, any screen will do, right? Right. But and I got just the regular white material, and I was really happy with it. A lot of good reviews on it, and mainly just price. I want to say originally it was $250, less than $300 when I bought it. I don't know what their current price is. I've had the frame for probably 8 or 9 years now. So
gotcha.
I've upgraded the material in it, but as far as current pricing, I don't really know where they're at there. But usually, I think when I upgraded to the WVS material, it was $250, something like that, to upgrade the material. So
and I think that's one thing that's going to be kind of present in this video is that there are a lot of things that you did along the way that really make this cost effective.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of times people watch these videos and they look at somebody's home theater and they're like, man, that's cool, but I'll never be able to afford that. I think what you've done in here, pretty much most people can afford this. There's nothing super extravagant, nothing really, really high end as far as price point. You've tried to keep it within a reasonable budget. You've done all the work yourself, which saved a ton of money. But I think that this is going to provide a lot of value for those guys out there that say, man, I don't have $30,000 or $50,000 to throw at a theater room, but I could build this over time and I could put some effort into this. And you may see something in this room that maybe the projector is more than your budget allows, but I just still want you to see that, man, you can get a projection image and get a great picture in even a small bedroom setup. So got a beautiful screen, beautiful picture. So what is actually projecting the picture? What kind of image are you throwing up here? Right
now I have a Epson 6050 UB.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very, very good. Before that, I had a BenQ, their HT3550, I think is what it is, 3500, whichever.
A lot more budget friendly, even under that.
Yeah, about a third the price of what that projector is. And I mean, to be honest, I expected to be just blown away whenever I went up to the Epson. And I mean, it's better, don't get me wrong, it's better, but it wasn't the, as much as I expected from it, but I will say that the Epson's a lot brighter. The colors pop a little bit more, but when you're talking about budget projectors, the BenQ was fantastic.
There's still
picture.
Some good options out
absolutely,
there. That won't break the bank and cause you to take out a second mortgage to do this thing.
And there's a lot of things I've upgraded over time. You don't have to dive into the several $1,000 projector right off the bat, and a lot of people may find that they're happy with, you start out with the budget projector and you may be happy with it. But
absolutely. Now, around your projector, you got something going on there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, obviously small room, so it gets hot in here really quick. A projector's like a little space heater up there, basically, so you got to have some ventilation going on. I went through several trying to run an exhaust vent. I upgraded the HVAC a little bit. I put a return area in here trying to keep air moving.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that more in detail.
Yeah, so that was the first thing I did. I knew it was going to get warm in here, so I went up, I think it was a 6-inch vent that came in here, and I went up to an 8-inch, and then I added a return vent just to kind of keep the air moving. And that still didn't quite do it, so I have a Harmony hub for my remote, which you can connect. I have a smart thermostat, so when I turn everything on, it automatically kicks the AC down a few degrees.
Oh, nice.
And then I have it turn the fan to on instead of auto, so that way the fan's running the whole time. I actually built like a hush box in the attic for the AC vent, so it goes through almost like a muffler. It's a little... so you don't hear the AC when it's running at all. It's running right now, and you don't hear it at all, which is great. And that still, it would still get hot in here. It would be good for maybe an hour and a half, and then if you're watching a 2.5-hour movie, you were opening the door, and it wasn't working for us.
Nice.
So what I ended up doing is there's a closet over here. I put an exhaust fan in there, and it kind of runs up through the attic, and it comes down directly in front of the projector.
Nice.
I ended up building a box to capture as much air coming out of the projector as possible, and I'll say now, 2.5 hours into a movie, it's still pretty comfortable in here. It'll start to get a little bit warm after a while, but for the most part, we're pretty comfortable. For you don't normally watch more than a 2.5-3 hour movie, so
I need to hire you to come kind of retweak mine, because my room gets hot as anything. Like you said, when you start adding people and you add equipment, that starts generating a lot of heat, and so definitely ventilation and AC and HVAC is something you want to consider. But in your case, this is already your home's already built. It's not like you're building this from scratch. You're not adding on to the room, so you had to do a lot of extra work climbing in the attic and rerunning that. So super cool there. So we've got this big, massive screen, beautiful, and it's almost wall to wall, and I love that. One thing I'm a big fan of is that immersiveness. And so one thing I didn't ask you, how far are we from the screen? Do you know how far your eyes are roughly? Right
now about 9 feet. Cool. When you recline, maybe a little closer to 10, 9.5, 10 feet. So
cool. So you're 120 inch, 9 feet. definitely is not like, oh my goodness. So a lot of guys, I get that question asked a lot, like, you know, how big can I go? And really part of it's a preference. Ideally, you want to have everything, you know, in that viewing angle so that it doesn't extend beyond your peripheral. I'm 150-inch diagonal in in 9 feet. So mine's a little bit bigger, but this is a beautiful immersive image. I think anything between like 120, 130, you can totally get away with. You just don't have much more width. I mean, you're almost wall to wall.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have gone a little bigger, but I don't have the throw distance right now. For the screen I have, the projector zoomed in as far as it'll go, and I actually had to mask that down just about an inch on each side.
Okay.
Because it just, you know, the Epson needs to be back, you know, probably 3 or 4 more feet than what it is.
Yeah, you don't want to have it out in your backyard.
Yeah, that's
it's not going to work.
But yeah, I would love to. I probably would have done a custom screen and just literally gone wall to wall with it, you know. But with the throw distance I have, I'm kind of that's all I can get out of it right there, and it's literally touching the wall behind there, so there's you know no more I could get out of it.
Sure. So when you're building a home theater, one of the things that I use, there's a projector central. They have a calculator.
Absolutely.
And so you can plug in your model, and it'll tell you your range at how far your screen needs to be. And so that's just a great resource. I'll link to it down maybe in the description. You can check that out. So definitely that kind of limited your...
Right.
And honestly, that's another thing that we find is that everybody has limitations in their room.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And one thing that I love about the home theater tours is it gives people an opportunity to see how did you overcome that obstacle? How did you overcome that limitation? And we're going to see a lot of that in this room because we're just setting up this light and this light and the camera, and we're moving around. We don't have a whole lot of floor space up here. So that's why this one's a little different. We're sitting here kind of having the conversation versus moving around because there's really nowhere to move around. So that's pretty wild. So we've got the screen. What is behind the screen?
I have the Triad in-wall silver. So I've actually just had those probably about a month now. Nice. Before that, I had the DIY Sound Group, HT8s, I think is what they are.
Okay.
Phenomenal speakers for their price range, and that's, you know, one of those people asking me, you know, speakers on a budget. They're not beautiful because they're, you know, you build your own boxes, but they sound, you know, phenomenal. Those will go reference level and beyond in this room. So it's, you know, but you're always looking for that upgrade, you know. We're all the same way on our theater rooms. Maybe I tweak this a little bit or upgrade this, and there was just something that those were always missing. That I was like, they're loud and they're clear. The dynamics, you know, like glass breaking and gunshots. I mean, they were just crystal clear, no matter how loud you turn them up. But when I was listening to 2-channel music or things like that, I was like, they sound good, but it's like they're just missing something, you know. And that's what kind of had me wanting to upgrade was just that little fine detail that I was missing. But I'll say with the Triads, their imaging is fantastic. Really, like I'm surprised sometimes, especially listening to 2-channel music in here. I'll use Tidal a lot of times, listening to acoustic music, where I've literally had to get up because I don't believe that the center channel's not on.
I've done that, yep.
You know, like, there's no way that that's, and you walk up there and you're like, it's just the 2 speakers.
It's like this phantom center that you're hearing.
Right, and even just little subtle sounds, you know, I've got the Atmos speakers overhead. There's sometimes where I stand up and I was like, no, it's just the 2 speakers. So they'll fool you sometimes, and that's one thing that the HCAs just... They didn't have that image. Like the room felt small. So now you turn all the lights off, you're watching a movie, and I feel like the sound stage seems a lot bigger with those. So that's been a good upgrade for me. You know, I'm really happy with that upgrade.
Yeah, so. Your room definitely sounds bigger than what it is. You know, when the lights go off, you forget you're in a bedroom. And I thought that was really, really a cool experience. Is that it does have this really nice immersiveness. You know, relatively speaking, your speakers are pretty close to us. We're going to talk about the surrounds and the Atmos, but lights go out and it's just kind of enveloping, but it feels bigger than what it is. Feels more spaciousness. So that's pretty cool to know that the Triads have that kind of property within them. And I believe you mentioned that the Triad has probably different tiers. There's like gold and silver.
Yeah, and I think it's probably similar to that THX rating. You know, it's I think from what I understand, they kind of design all their speakers to sound the same. It's just a matter of how much output do you need, how big is your room. Right. Yeah, so they have like the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. I went with the silver. that would do a room, you know, a lot bigger than this room, just in case, you know, I'll move someday. You
never know.
You never
might
know.
have a bigger house down the road.
Right. And,
that's pretty smart.
You know, so I didn't want to. I probably would have been perfectly fine with the bronze, but there's always that part of you. It's like, man, I should have went with the one up from that. You know.
Yeah.
So, and the golds, I looked at those, but the enclosure is just a little bigger, and it would have been a little harder to fit that in the space that I need. So, you know. Settled for I say settled, you know, went with the silvers, and I'm perfectly happy with them. So.
Absolutely. So we've got 3 speakers up front. Let's continue with the speakers. So what are you running for surrounds? For
the surrounds, I have the Triad silver on wall. Those are bipoles.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people don't recommend those for Atmos, but personally, you know, and that's the good thing about home theater. It's, you know, whatever sounds good to you works for you.
Yep.
So I like the way that the bipoles sound, because they just have a little bit, we're pretty close to them.
Yeah.
So to kind of diffuse that sound coming out of them a little bit, you know, for me it works pretty well. So like I say, we're, you know,
5
probably
feet,
4 maybe 4 feet from that one, 6. You know, so the bipole I think helps. I actually had just the HT8s back there too, because I had a full set of those, and those were, you know, you could tell right where the speaker was when something was coming out of it, and those tend to, you know, it spreads it out, so there's a lot of times you're not really sure, you don't really pinpoint the sound as much, and
so you got to figure out kind of what works for your setup, for your room, for your space. I use wide dispersion speakers in mine for side surrounds as well as rear surrounds. They still work great. You know, I've thought about, you know, should I move to a regular direct radiating? Maybe down the road I'll try that. But like you said, when you kick back and you got the lights out and you're just smiling from ear to ear because you're enjoying it, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So up top, we've got some Atmos speakers. What are those?
Yeah, those are the Triad silver in ceiling. You know, they're part of that whole set. So I have 4 of those. Front and back, so was that 5.1.4, I guess. So
5.1.4 setup, because again, you really don't, well, we'll get back to that a little bit, but we don't have room back here really for surround back, and it's just not a big room. So those provide plenty of surround effects, and being the wide dispersion, you're actually getting some reflection off the back wall because of those.
Yes.
So going back up to the front of your screen, a couple of things I want to point out that I really love that you've done is something that I did in my own home theater. And that's, number one, you put hinges on your screen. And so that's something super practical, but it allows you to have easy access behind there. Kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it used to just be mounted to the wall, you know, and it wasn't that hard to take down. They're not overly heavy. You take it up, take it, but, you know, obviously it's a small room, so right. I don't have to get back there a lot because I just have in-wall speakers. There's no equipment behind there, but every now and then you just need to get back there to, you know, check everything out. But so I actually made my own hinges for it. They don't really make a hinge that goes to a projector screen. So that's you know, just some DIY rig it up stuff back there. But it works great.
And then you've got a way of holding it up.
Yeah, no, well, I don't have. Like I looked into doing the gas shocks for it, but no more than I rarely have it open. So I had literally just have a piece of PVC pipe cut to length in a closet in the next room that just prop it up there, and you know we're good to go.
So again, guys, super budget ways that you can kind of build out a home theater room. Some really practical things that you can do to give easy access behind your screen. You also added insulation back there, which I really like. Tell us about that.
So, yeah, and that was one of the things too. I'm looking to get as many sound panels in here. Small room and bass, just they don't play nice together.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I actually, behind the screen, where my speakers are about the middle of the screen, you know, height. Everything above that, I removed the drywall.
Yeah.
Put in rock wool insulation, and then put acoustic material over that. So it's just black.
Sure.
But you have, you know, 4 inches of sound absorption behind there. And then below that, I bought the, you know, just the foam panels. Those don't really do much, but they look cool.
They look awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
So, but there actually is some, like I say, the rock wool insulation behind there that is really, you know, I have a really good bass response in here, and a lot of that's because of the acoustic treatment. You have bass traps in the corners, you know, floor to ceiling. Those are, they're 2-inch ductboard.
Okay.
And then behind that, there's rock wool insulation. So you got a 24-inch wide piece of ductboard, and then triangles of rock wool all the way to the ceiling. So
So again, just kind of some budget-friendly options. You can buy these that are pre-made. They're just going to cost you a lot more.
Right.
And if you're a little bit handy, or a lot handy in your case, you can build these for a fraction of the cost. And I love the fact that you've added those. And then, so while we're talking about acoustic treatment, kind of tell us about these, because these are kind of multifunctional. I love what you've done here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so these started just as, so this room's evolved like, I don't know how many times, we're like, oh, let's change this, paint it this color, but these started, the trim at the top wasn't there. They were just basically just a rectangle with and that's actually a duct board for HVAC, which is rigid fiberglass. It's already got the black material on it, which is perfect for making sound panels. That's the whole point of duct board is to absorb sound. So if you have a place to get that, most of the time they sell that in like 4x10 sheets or 5x10. You can get whatever size you want and cut it to whatever size you need. It's probably a little more affordable than buying like the Owens Corning that's already cut to that size. It's easier to buy them pre-cut, but then you have to wrap them in material, and that's kind of what drew me to the duct board, was it already has the black material on it. So that's why I went with that. And then after a while, we decided to add, some nicer trim to it, just to give it, make it a little more decorative. And we put lights in it, just to, we have the glow-in-the-dark star ceiling, so black lights on the top. Well, actually, I'm on the bottom too, just to kind of.
It looks cool, man.
Yeah, it gives it a nice, it's still dark, so you can have all the accent lights on while you're watching a movie.
Sure.
The black lights, though, they kind of make the screen glow a little bit purple. So,
But you have that, you can control that with your
I've got
smart,
a remote. Yeah, I've got a remote. I can turn the lights on and off whenever.
Nice. And then there's some decorative here. Did you make those? Did you buy those? Like the windows?
The windows, those are Hobby Lobby.
Very cool. See, so practical, man. So practical. So you found those. You're like, dude, those are going to look awesome right there.
Yeah, I thought they'd kind of give it that cool window look or whatever.
Absolutely, man. And then you've got the banners from the different schools, I guess. Not the schools, the different...
Yeah, the different houses in Hogwarts. It's funny, like, this room is, like, insane with Harry Potter. You would think we were just... I mean, we're Harry Potter fans, don't get me wrong, but...
Okay, anybody that has Harry Potter as their Wi-Fi...
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're into it a little bit.
But maybe not to the extent the room would lead you to believe. I guess it was just one of those, we kind of started... it's kind of a dark theme, so for a theater room, it just kind of works. And then we had this, and it just kind of grew, and then it turned into, every time we go to Hobby Lobby or somewhere, where that would look cool in the theater room, or, we go to Universal Studios a lot. So when you go through the Wizarding World there, I'm always looking at all they have so much detail there. It's kind of, I'm taking pictures of things, just kind of getting ideas.
Sure.
So that's where a lot of our ideas came from, was just walking around there. It's like they just have a lot of random stuff they put in there to just kind of give it that theme.
Right. It's a cool vibe, man. You walk in here and you walk in, you're like, wait a minute, this is a bed. This is not a bedroom. Right. I mean, your brain is totally transported to a total different dimension, a different element. And even up front, you've got this beautiful cabinet here. It's really low, but you've got this ambient lights, these lanterns, you've got the wands, you've got scrolls. I mean, just all this. What's going on up here? Because I don't know much about Harry Potter. So kind of tell us about some of the little components up there, and even the books down below.
So the books down below, we had the big case of our Blu-ray movies. I have too many movies to try and keep all the original cases. Sure. I'd have to have I probably have 400 movies. So that's a lot of cases to hold on to. So I ended up going with, the old school Case Logic, that'll hold however many. And then I found these on Amazon. They look like kind of that old book look. Yeah. So I think each one of those will hold 100 and 120 movies, something like that. So I started buying those just because they kind of go in with the decor, but the movies, we have 4K and Blu-ray movies in those.
Sure.
So, and they just kind of blend in with the decorations now, so.
And then like the lanterns up here, those are cool. It gives us like, it's not static. It's like you've got motion in here with the lanterns. Pretty simple, low budget for those, right?
Yeah, those, again, they were just some Hobby Lobby lanterns, and I think at the Halloween store they were selling the flicker flame lights. You know, I think we bought those like on a clearance sale. I bought a whole bunch of the flicker lights for little of nothing at the time. You know, I was like, oh, this would be cool in the room. Yeah. And so I kind of, you know, got the light sockets from Lowe's. You can buy just individual. You know, so I made them into a lamp myself, and all that's there's a plug-in up there that, you know, it's got basically a cord that's
kind of tucked away and hidden. And
yeah, and actually that was whenever I did the room originally. I changed out the base trim there, and I actually that's actually a lap siding, so on the back side of that it's got a gap about an inch tall.
Nice.
Because I was thinking, like, you know, that way you can tuck cables, a lot of wires on each side of there. So that was kind creative. Of without having to use the channeling, you know, it was like that way I can just put that trim down there, and it kind of hides the wires, and it's
super
functional. You know? So that's
super practical, and you'd never know it was that. I mean, I didn't know. I thought it was just regular standard baseboards.
Yeah. So I mean, and that was one of those too. With it being lap siding, it was pretty cheap at the time I bought it, fairly inexpensive. You know, for actually probably more affordable than buying actual trim. You know, and it's a bigger board and everything. So yeah, that worked really well for that. And again, that's when I say this room's changed so many times. There's all those, you know, when people ask you what you would have done different, you know, it's things like that. You know, I got to the point, it's like I cannot tuck any more wires under there, and my next option is going to be to run all my wires through the attic and down. And
that's a big project. I was
like, you know, and I've done a lot of that too, but on the back wall back there, that's an exterior wall there. So trying to get everything from the receiver up into the attic that's a challenge there. So
so speaking of your back wall, let's kind of transition back there.
All right. So in the back, there's actually a window. You know, we kind of decorated that to look like a window, but it actually is a window. And I made that into an acoustic panel also. So that's got a 2-inch ductboard on it. And then I found some material in the window frames that make it look
nice.
You know, kind of have a window look. But, you know, it's kind of dual purpose. It blocks the light from the window, and it's got some sound absorbing properties also. So it is functional.
Gotcha. And we've got more sound kind of properties over here on the sides, right?
Yeah, and in the corner, you know, you have the bass traps that go all the way to the ceiling. And then I found the material that looks like the bookshelves just to kind of make them a little more decorative. That's, you know, for bass traps to have the wife acceptance factor.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't get away with bass traps just because they're so big, and they're not great to look at usually. But that made them kind of go with the decor and just kind of blend in with the room, and you don't really realize that's what's going on there.
Gotcha.
And, you know, on the right here, it was kind of a joke at one point. For my wife's birthday, whatever it was, I don't remember, a few years ago, I found a company that would mail you a personalized Hogwarts acceptance letter.
Oh, cool.
So I had that sent to my wife, and it came with, you know, your bus ticket, everything, the train ticket. And a year or so later, she did the same for me. So now we both have, you know, our matching acceptance letters. But
nice, super cool. There's so much going on here. Kind of walk us through just maybe some of the components that we see on display.
So a lot of it, you know, it's just things that we thought would look cool in the room. It wasn't like, you know, a lot of that doesn't have any kind of special meaning or anything like that. It was just, it kind of went with the theme. A lot of the potion bottles, the books that I bought, those are actually like journals. There's nothing in the book. It's, you can, you know, you know, like what is that? The Goblet of Fire up there. That's from one of the movies. We got that on a trip to Universal Studios Hollywood several years, I think. Several years ago we went to Hollywood.
Nice.
And I saw that and I was like, that would look cool in our room. And that's 2 theater rooms ago. But
absolutely. And then this cool clock over here. Tell me about that.
So the clock, that was again one of those things. I think it was Hobby Lobby again. I just thought the clock looked cool, so we set the time to 11 o'clock because that's what time the Hogwarts Express leaves.
Nice.
So, you know, it had to be on 11 o'clock.
Okay, so you say you're not Harry Potter. You're pretty involved here, buddy.
Yeah, we've seen them a couple times.
No doubt. And then right below that, this beautiful chess set.
Yeah, so that was the Wizarding chess set from the movies. I actually, the actual chess board I've had for years, and I built the box that goes around it.
Cool.
And then I bought the Wizarding chess pieces to go in it. Just thought it just kind of goes with the theme. So just trying to make that blend in with the room as much as possible, but still kind of have those little aspects from the. So like all the Harry Potter fans, they see a lot of that, and they understand what a lot of that is, I guess.
And then who wouldn't have a Harry Potter room without the Gryffindor banner above their projector?
Yes.
I love it. So Scott, one of my favorite aspects of a home theater are subwoofers. But being in a room this small, we're 12 by 13 with 8-foot ceilings. You don't have a whole lot of floor space, not a lot of real estate to put big, massive subwoofers. But I know you're like me, you like to have that low, kind of gut-wrenching bass. You want something that's very tactile. So how were you able to get down to sub 20 hertz frequencies in such a small room?
So luckily I have a cool wife, you know, so the bedroom right behind here is, you know, that's kind of my room also, but so I went with an infinite baffle subwoofer because it's just me and my wife here, so I don't care how much noise happens in the room behind me.
Sure.
Because I'm going to be in here watching this anyway, so I could care less how loud that room is. But
gotcha.
So I have a 18-inch, it's a Dayton Ultimax, I think is what it is.
Okay.
You know, it's running off of a 1700 watt amp, which is actually way too much power for an infinite baffle subwoofer. I've got the gain barely on, you know, I could probably do a third of that and get the same output out of it. But that, you know, combined with the 15s in the back, I have it rolled off at 12 hertz. And, you know, whenever I was running my tone sweeps to do all my EQ in here, it'll play well over 100 decibels at 12 hertz in here. I mean, it'll completely pressurize this room, but you know, which is really not the point of multiple subwoofers. That's a lot of people are always like, oh, it's overkill for that room. It's like, it's really not. Like, I have a really smooth bass response with a ton of overhead.
Nice.
Nothing ever, you know, no matter how big the explosion is, it's just a nice tight, there's nothing bottoms out. And that's really the point of multiple subwoofers and big subwoofers is there's just, it's effortless, you know. It's I had a, you know, way back in the day, I had 2 Klipsch, you know, Best Buy 12-inch subwoofers that I thought were amazing until I got real subwoofers.
They rattled stuff. And you're like, yeah, this is cool.
Most of your store, you know, big box store subwoofers, budget subwoofers are super loud at like 40 hertz. You know, and that's it. Not much below that.
Kind of one note wonder kind of deal.
Yeah, and they do that great. But you really have to go big for a lot of power and a big subwoofer to what most people think is overkill. It's really what you need if you really want that experience.
So infinite baffle, some of you guys may not be familiar with it. What is an infinite baffle? Like, what is the concept there?
So it's using the room behind it. There's a formula there of how big that room has to be for the ideal space. It's usually I don't think it cares how big the room is. There's a minimum. There's a minimum that you know, like a lot of times the closet's really not even big enough. So it really needs to be a pretty big open space. That's why a lot of people put them in attics. And I just didn't want to go through that hassle. I considered that, and I was like, that'll be so much work. I was like, I've got a room right next to here. I kind of did a frame within a frame, so it's not touching the actual wall.
Cool. So there's some isolation there.
So it's, you know, it's got maybe an 1/8 of an inch gap, you know, if about as tight as I could get it without it actually touching the wall.
Nice.
And it's bolted to the concrete, so, you know, it can do its thing without, you know, shaking the house apart. And that's, you know, a lot of times when people do infinite baffles, they do dual opposing subwoofers because they offset each other with how much they're shaking your house. A lot of times the ones in the attics, you know, they'll do opposing subwoofers like that. But, you know, I think whenever I EQ'd these, I rolled them off around 12 hertz because you really don't need much lower than that. And then you kind of protect them from damage. There's a couple movies that'll play some ridiculously low bass that if you have capable subwoofers, it's like unbelievable. I think, was that Godzilla, one of those that I watched, that it was just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how loud that is. Just the low frequencies, like Black Hawk Down's one of those. There's a couple scenes on that I think get into single digits that are just insane.
Well, there's on Ready Player One, I've been to several, you know, of course, I've toured a bunch of people's home theaters, and they're all incredible in their own, you know, perspective. And But one thing that I've noticed in some of them is when you get to the scene, the race scene, and you've got Kong that jumps off the tower and he lands on the freeway. And then when the dinosaur puts his foot down, those are really low frequencies. And I know some people, I've listened to their home theater and I went, we're missing that lower octave there, or that lower section of the LFE. And with yours being able to get down sub 20, a lot of people don't realize like how exciting that is.
Oh,
I mean, when you can get below 20 hertz is great, 17 hertz is great, but man, you're hitting down to 12 hertz, and that's rolling off.
Yeah.
So it's not like a brick wall that stops at 12. You're probably going to roll off into, and you're experiencing some of those single digits.
Oh yeah,
that's
absolutely
phenomenal, man. It's quite an exhilarating experience.
And there's scenes that will just surprise you in a movie. Like you just, I think, what did we watch? The Martian just a couple nights ago, towards the end of the movie, where they blow up the front of the ship to slow down.
Yeah.
There's like a scene on there where this, because I have transducers in the seats also. That combined with the subwoofers is just like, you're just smiling, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, that is so cool.
It's a lot of fun being in this room, that is for sure. So you mentioned transducers, so let's, so we did talk about the Klipsch. So you have Klipsch 15s back here.
I have two Klipsch 15s. They kind of suffered the same fate that a lot of those do. The original plate amp and one of them died.
Sure.
I got one of those warranted, and they were on back order for a while. Okay. Klipsch was great on that. They took care of everything. Awesome. No issues with that, but they had some supply issues there for a while. And,
sure.
So I ended up, I kind of got tired of waiting on the amps, and I went and bought a rack amp off of eBay. You know, it was like a Electrovoice amp, and I think it's in 2 channels, 650 watts.
Okay, so that's a lot of power.
It's a true RMS rating. You know, no BS in that number. So each one of those, I'm running it in stereo mode, so each one of those are getting 650 watts, and I think the stock amp's 400.
Yeah. So give it a little bit more power, which is not a problem.
Not a problem at all, and I can tell you, like, that made a night and day difference. The limitation on the Klipsch 15 is their amp. Okay. For sure. So cool. You know, the amp's still back there just to block the hole, but I ran the speaker wire directly to an amp, and it really.
So that's kind of interesting, though. So if you've got an older subwoofer and maybe the amp plate dies, either if the company doesn't make one. Or it's too expensive to buy it and replace it, maybe look at an external amp and just run the cable right into the subwoofer itself.
Right, absolutely, and it made a big difference. And then when my replacement amp finally came in, I'm actually using that amp for my transducers now. I was like, you know what, there's a use for this amp right here. So
now we can transition to that. So you mentioned transducers. What the heck is a transducer?
So I have they're the Aura Pro bass shakers. Okay. They function the same as what a speaker does, I guess, pretty much. They bolt directly to the seat, and they'll vibrate the seat at whatever frequency the subwoofers are playing at. Sure. So if you do that right, you know, some people say they're gimmicky, but you know, if you have them properly integrated, it makes a big difference.
All has to do with calibration. I really do.
Yes.
Because you can turn, like anything else, you can have subwoofers that are overkill for a room.
Absolutely,
because you've cranked them up. I've always tried to say the only time you should notice your subwoofer is when you turn them off. And I think that's kind of what you've done here, because I didn't know you had them in here.
Right.
I'm like, man, that bass is just so smooth. You're like, yeah, it is, but I've also got some transducers here. But because I didn't notice them, that means that you've got them dialed in really nice.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
A lot of people don't EQ them either, and that's the thing. Like the Aura Pros, they're really strong around 40 hertz. Okay. So
so you kind of bump that down a little bit.
Tried to flatten that out. And some of that was trial and error to see, but they actually have some apps for iPhone that you can set it on the seat, and you can crank them up. You run tone sweeps on them just like you do your subwoofers, and it'll tell you what frequency the seat. So I was actually able to see where some of those peaks were and smooth them out a little bit, because they were kind of the same way. That 40 hertz, they were really strong, and but they play pretty smooth now, and they integrate pretty well with everything else. So.
And I would imagine that might be the fact. The Aura Pros, they're probably less expensive than maybe the butt kickers. Is that right?
Yeah, and I actually had butt kickers at one point, but for me, they were just too much. You know, You can turn the butt kickers up to where your drink's splashing out.
Yeah, I mean, crazy, man.
Those are probably great for gaming and stuff like that. But for maybe if I lived in an apartment where I couldn't have subwoofers, I might, you know, something like that. But
gotcha.
But for me, they were just too much.
Okay.
And the Aura Pros, they're kind of subtle. I mean, obviously, I can tell when they're off. Sure. You know, like I'm disappointed. I'm like, there's something wrong here. You
what's
know,
missing here? Yeah.
You know, I can hear it, but just to really feel it.
Sure.
They help out with that a lot. You know, they kind of just they all work together.
Sure. So again, if you don't have a big room, if you don't have the ability, if you don't have a cool wife that will let you put, you know, a IB sub, an infinite baffle subwoofer in there, maybe adding tactile transducers would be good with some smaller subwoofers, and definitely will add to that impact. And so while we're talking about where those are coupled to, what are we sitting in here?
These are the Octane Flex HRs. Got these a couple years ago. Been pretty happy with them. Yeah. They have the headrest that moves, so I like that. They're electric recline.
And then we got accessory trays.
Yeah, I got the accessory trays. Got the wine glass holder. Yeah. They have cup holders built in, and you can move the trays around to any of the seats you want.
Sure.
They have chargers built into them for your phone or whatever. So they got lights in them also, so you can turn the lights on and off.
Nice.
I don't really use those a lot.
Sure. Almost all of the theater seats have those really bright blue lights in them. So I thought about changing those out, but I was actually going to because I have some of the strip lights, but I didn't realize until I was trying to hook those up that these are 24 volt lights and not 12 volt lights. Gotcha.
So you'd have to order, you know, 24 volt light versus most of the strip lights are 12 volts.
Gotcha. Very cool. Scott, you mentioned that you've got a couple of amplifiers powering your 15s, and then you've also got another amplifier powering your 18-inch up front.
Yes.
Kind of walk us through your rack and the equipment you've got there.
So for the 15s, and that was, again, I was looking for an affordable amp because my plate amp died, and I was thinking it was going to be temporary.
Gotcha.
And I ended up just keeping it. So I bought, it was for eBay fine, you know, a couple $100, $300, whatever it was. It was a Electrovoice CPS2, which is more of a commercial amplifier. They use those in some theaters, your big church venues, things like that.
Like a pro audio kind of amplifier.
Right, yeah. And it actually has multi-speed fans, so it's pretty quiet. Sometimes they'll get hot and the fans will kick up for a minute, but for most of the time you really don't notice them.
Right.
So, yeah, I was so happy with how much it improved the sound of the subwoofers, I just stuck with it.
Sure.
And then I decided to add the other subwoofer because just having two subs in the back, you kind of, they're a little more easier to localize.
Sure.
You know, you kind of need them spread out. Yeah. So that's when I started looking into the Infinite Baffle, and I was so happy with the performance of that amp. I actually looked for another one on eBay and found another good deal on one. So I have two of those, and that's what's running the subwoofers. Nice. So bridged, you know, for the single, I think it's 1,700 watts, somewhere around in there, and stereo, you know, they can. I'm running it for them, so I want to say it's like 650 per channel, something like that.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what else do we have in the rack?
So on the rack, I have for my processor, I have a Marantz AV7705.
Yeah.
And I think you had one of those
I
before.
did, man. It's a solid processor.
It's a great piece of equipment. I've been pretty happy with that. It's pretty versatile. It's got good sound quality. The EQ on it's, you know, the multi EQ. And I actually have the what's the new one? The multi EQ X. Their PC based one.
Nice.
I went ahead and got that. And
are you liking that? Is it
love
pretty decent learning curve, or?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty intuitive. You know, if you know how to use Odyssey, and
gotcha.
I mean, it's a little more involved than just, you know, running standard Odyssey, but you have a lot more control over it. You can control your curves a lot more. You can actually do some PEQ on it.
Cool.
I didn't really use that feature, but you can kind of set kind of a curtain of where you want it to EQ, which I think you can do some of that on the app.
Yeah, you can do it on the app. Yep.
But
it's hard. I mean, it's just it's you can't get like really fine tuned. You click and drag stuff, and it's just not like minute increments. So.
One of the things I like about that the most is you have the ability to just measure one speaker at a time. I don't have to go through the whole, you know, if the dog barks or something like that. And, you know, a lot of people kind of complain it's $200, and I was like, that was worth it right there to me. You know, because I have 2 dogs. They're going to bark. Yeah. There's no chance that in the middle of the day I'm going to go 30 minutes without a noise happening. You know,
well, with the app, it does give you the option, like if you measure and for whatever happens, something happened during that measurement, you can go back and retake that one.
Right.
But I think you had mentioned to me that, let's say, for instance, you add a 4th subwoofer in here, or you add different subwoofers back there. With that, can you go in and just remeasure those without having to do your entire
I believe
room?
So, because on the computer, it saves all your other measurements.
Right.
So I can pull my old measurements up. So nothing changed up there, so I should be able to just load those. And I'm pretty sure on their training video I watched that you do have the ability to do that.
That would be worth the $200 for me, man.
Absolutely.
Because I've got 11 speakers, man.
Right, yeah.
And you know, and 2 subwoofers. And so to do that, it takes a long stinking time.
And you have to plan for it, because you know, sometimes I'll do it late at night because there's a road behind us and it never fails. There's a loud truck, a lot of bass to it that goes by, and you can literally see that in the speaker response.
Sure.
It picked that up.
Yeah.
So now, just no big deal, just that one speaker, I'll rerun it. So I'll do it whenever I feel like it now, because I don't have to really worry too much. I just rerun that one speaker. But,
nice. So what else is in the rack?
So I have a SpeakerCraft, it's a BB1265.
Okay.
So that's a 8-channel amplifier that's running, which I have 3 of those channels bridged, so you can bridge any 2 channels.
Sure.
So my
bridge just means you're combining, like, say, channel 1, channel 2 to usually double that power to give more power to a speaker.
Right, so 8-channel mode, it's 65 watts per channel, and that's one thing I like about SpeakerCraft. They give you one measurement.
Yeah, gotcha.
You know, it's all channels driven, full frequency.
Cool.
So they give you...
They're not fudging their numbers.
Right, so they give you 65 watts per channel, all channels driven, and I think it's like 0.08 distortion, which is pretty good with all channels driven.
Sure.
So I bridge the front 3 for my front 3 speakers, so they're like 130 watts to each speaker.
Gotcha.
And then the 2 surrounds are 65 watts, which, you know, I'm like 5 or 6 feet from them, so that's plenty of power for those. They're pretty efficient speakers. And that's another one of those. It was an eBay find. Actually, no, that one I bought at a local stereo shop. They had it for sale. And, you know, he's just kind of, they were using it for their, you know, background music.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people use them for, like, you know, multi-channel, or I guess, you know,
like in-ceiling speakers in their shop or whatever.
Right, so they have plenty of power to run pretty much anything like that. So at the time, I had a different receiver, and I was really just looking, I think I had a Pioneer receiver. It was Atmos, but you had to have a separate amplifier to get the... To run you could only run one set of overheads, I think.
Right,
you had to have external amp.
Sure.
So I was like, that's actually a pretty good option, so I can run multiple speakers and zones. And so whenever I got the Marantz, it was one of those, again, I was happy with the performance of that, so I looked on eBay, and I got another one. They have the 12-channel version, so it's running outdoor speakers, my Atmos speakers. It's, you know, so it gives me a lot of channels to work with there, and I think I have several open still anyways. But those are, I mean, it's the same specs as the 865, but it's got 12 channels instead of 8. And those are insanely heavy amplifiers too. I think the 865 is like 65 pounds, and the 12 channel is like close to 75, 78 pounds, something like that. That's a lot of weight. Man. Yeah, it is.
That's good.
Absolutely. But, you know, they're really solid performers. They're quiet, no buzzing, no... For a really big room, they may not have quite the power you would need, but for this room, way more than enough power.
Again, you're just figuring out what's going to work best in your setup, budget, you know, space constraints, and you found a good solution to that.
Absolutely.
And so what's encased around that? What's holding those?
So I'm not even sure the brand, but you know, you're always plugging Youthman deals, and I can say that was a Youthman deal for sure.
Nice.
It was a Facebook Marketplace, one of those. It was, I think some people bought a house that the previous owner had a theater, and some of the equipment was left behind, and they just didn't want it, you know. And you know, it included a Harmony hub, the power conditioner, there was actually a receiver still in there. It wasn't Atmos, but you know, it was, for its day, was probably a flagship Yamaha receiver. I mean, I don't remember what model it was. I gave it to a friend of mine, but but it was one of those, the whole rack, $75, you know. And I was just like, and I
$75 for a steel rack Oh my goodness, man.
With the Harmony harp,
stuff,
most people would, for a used Harmony harp, you probably pay $100, and
Nice.
and I even told the people when I bought it, I was like, I just want the rack, you got a lot of, and they were just, I don't want it, I just want it out of the house.
Take it out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I've always been a big proponent of used equipment, quality used equipment. There's some great deals out there.
Yeah.
I spent probably the first 10, 12, 14 years building my home theater just with used equipment.
Yep.
And so there's definitely nothing wrong with that. If you're looking to try to save some money, there's definitely some great options. I even made a course on it. And really just the course was just sharing my experience, the deals that I found over the years, and kind of the process that I went through.
Right.
And I was just able to duplicate that over and over and over. And so, cheesy plug, I'll mention that here. If you're interested in checking it out, by all means, I think it'll definitely easily pay for the course. Just a couple of tips in there. But suffice it to say, there's some awesome deals out there. And $75 for that, and that's phenomenal.
If you're buying quality equipment used, I mean, it's always going to be quality equipment, and it holds, there's some residual value there too. So if you ever
and if it breaks, I mean, the reality, you don't have a ton invested in it. You either, buy something to fix it, or you go and get something else.
Absolutely.
So definitely, I love having new equipment, but sometimes used is a great option.
Absolutely. And pretty much everything in the rack is used equipment except for the Marantz, which it was one of the refurbished deals.
Nice. Seems save some money there.
Right, yeah. I mean, it was several $100s off of retail just for being refurbished, but it's like new. It comes with the same warranty, so that didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
There's most of the equipment that I bought in here is used. Some of my Triad speakers, a lot of those were new old stock.
Okay, gotcha.
So they're several years old, but some of them were brand new still in the box. My front three were used, but all my overheads and surrounds were still brand new in the box, even though they're several years old.
Yeah.
But so there's ways to look around and save money. There's a lot of companies that specialize just in refurbished equipment, but it looks and functions like new, so that's good enough for me. Save money where you can.
Absolutely. Now, Scott, you've got a rack behind us, but we've also got 4 theater seats that really take up the entire width of your room. And so I can't imagine it. It's kind of frustrating to reach back there to try to get your 4Ks and your Blu-rays in there and swapping out discs. You came up with a really creative way to kind of resolve that. What'd you do there?
Yeah, originally I did have the Blu-ray player back there, and it wasn't a big deal. You could reach through there, but if somebody's sitting here, you got to have them get up, all that. So I actually have a closet behind there, and so I ran all the wiring. I built a shelf, so it's just built into the wall right there. So it's I can just reach over there and throw a disc in, and it works great there. So
again, I mean, just creativity, using your brain, thinking outside the box. I've never seen anybody put just a single component in their wall right here.
Yeah.
So practical.
Yeah, and that was one of those just solving a small problem, and it was one of those that it's like, it's going to be a lot of work to move it over there. Now, one of those, if you had it to do over again, I would have just done that right from the get-go.
Right.
I probably would have put the whole rack in there right from the get-go, but that's actually a closet, and we do use it, so that's all our Christmas decorations. We tried to load that closet with things that we only use once a year, so Christmas was perfect for that. So we kind of joke we're gonna unseal the vault for Christmas, So.
Well, I love it. That's actually super practical.
Yeah.
And just makes it, again, it just adds convenience to your home theater.
Yeah, and I kind of had to shop around. I'm glad I went with the seats I did, but it did take some shopping because I wanted 4.
Right.
And there's quite a few of them that just, they won't fit.
Yeah, they're a little bit wider on this.
Right,
so.
And these fit the space perfectly. I really wanted the curved row, but that adds 6 or 8 inches on each side, and it wouldn't fit in here. So, if we end up getting a bigger room down the line, I can move these to the back or whatever, the front seats, however, but that's the good thing about it. You can always add to them. But so far, I've been really happy with these seats, and they fit the space perfectly.
So Scott, in this bedroom, you made the decision to paint the ceiling black, but you've also done something really cool and kind of creative. Kind of walk us through that.
So I'd looked at one point at doing like the fiber optic star ceiling.
Yeah.
But with all the speakers and lights and everything, it just didn't it was a lot of work for, you know, doing a couple of small panels.
I can't imagine.
And, you know, at the time I had like one of those small fluorescent black lights. And so I kind of experimented with the UV paint and stuff, just doing little stars on the ceiling. And it had a really cool effect. And it used to be just in the back, and then it kind of gradually, let's do the whole ceiling. And so I ended up getting some of the strip lights, the low voltage strip lights. So at the top of the sound panels, I have black lights.
Yeah.
So those light up all the stars in the ceiling.
Nice.
And you use glow paint. So when you first turn the lights off and the room's black, you get this cool effect. And they kind of die down over time. Yeah, it fades over time. Nice. And there's some glow in the dark paint, but there's also some of the UV paint. So when you have all the black lights on, there's certain colors you see that when you turn the black lights off, they're not there anymore.
Gotcha.
And that was just kind of experimenting, you know. It started out just
having some fun. But again, to me, it ties in totally with the Harry Potter, the Hogwarts. You know, you're kind of out in the castle and you look up and you just see the stars, man.
Yeah, it turned out pretty good, actually, better than I thought. That's why we just kind of, it started out as a small area, and then I was like, you know, I'm going to just do the whole ceiling.
Isn't that kind of like this whole hobby, though? It starts off something little, maybe got just this cute little subwoofer, and then by the end you got 4 18s in your home theater like somebody I know. But super, super cool. I love just the styling of that. And then, you know, you've got, again, all that tied into your harmony. And then I think even with your, the girl that we don't mention, the A word.
Yeah.
Can you control it with that? Voice commands, I guess that's an easier way to say it. Can you tell her to turn them on and off and that sort of thing? Or is it just with your remote?
I just use my phone, the app on my phone. You know, some people like the voice control stuff. I've never really been into that.
Yeah. I like it, man. I love being able to walk into my theater room and go, hey, turn on this. Yeah. Hey, turn on that. And interestingly, as I was driving here, I was trying to let you know I ran into some traffic. And I was like, hey, can you take us? I didn't even know it could do it, but I'm like, let me just ask. I'm like, hey, can you take a screenshot and text it to Scott? And boom, it sent it. I was like, oh my goodness. So voice commands are pretty cool. Yeah. But being able to just hit it on your remote, super, super.
I use a lot of that on my phone for stuff like that, but for the automation, which you could use that in here, I just don't really utilize that. So. Sure. But, you know, most of the time it's just, I have a button to turn the lights on and off, and it's not that big a deal for me.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
So, Scott, you mentioned you've been in this home for about 4 years. And so if you could back up maybe 4 years ago, before you started this whole room, is there anything that you would do different?
There's quite a few things I would do different. One of the things is speakers. I probably would have got some quality in-wall speakers just to start with.
Okay.
In the beginning, I was trying to work around speakers I already had, you know, which were the Klipsch.
And we typically do that.
Yeah, and I think I've gone through several sets of speakers trying to find the ones I like. And, you know, everybody has that end goal. This is the speaker I really want.
Sure.
You know, you probably spend a lot of money trying to save money sometimes in this hobby. And
man, I think that's huge.
That's one thing that I've noticed myself and other people a lot. You buy this and then you buy this and you lose money every time you sell it.
Every single time you sell it. Yep.
But, you know, and the other side of that is too, some of that equipment is pretty expensive and you have to stair step up to it.
Correct.
But a lot of those things I wish I would have just bought what I wanted the first time, you know.
The buy once, cry once.
Absolutely, yeah, because...
And sometimes it's just a matter of patience. Sometimes we do that because we want it now. I don't want to build this thing over a 6-month period or a year period. I want to build it over a 1-month period so I can sit down and enjoy the final product. But to do that, you either got to cut corners and either get what you don't really want, or you know, you've got to figure out other ways to make it happen, like buying used or just happen to find those good deals.
Right.
So I think that's huge, and just kind of having that plan out ahead of where do I want to see this go to? Like, what's my end game? Where am I headed towards? And then just making steps towards that as progress, versus just going, okay, well, I don't have the budget now, so therefore I'm just going to get super, super cheap. And my wife was always real bad about that. She would buy the least expensive thing just because of cost. And I had to tell her over the years, I don't like to buy the most expensive because I feel I don't get the best value, but I definitely don't like to buy the one on the bottom because I'm usually not satisfied with that, or it breaks too quickly. And so I'm kind of the guy that likes to get in the middle somewhere. So, but I think that's huge advice for somebody that's wanting to do something like that in their theater room. Is there anything, other things that you'd mentioned? There's probably several things you said.
Several things. Accessibility. You know, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. They have this huge equipment rack, you build it into the wall, and then it's almost impossible to get to the back of it. You know, like I have wall-to-wall chairs here and all my equipment's behind there. So there's things that over time I've figured out workarounds that should have thought about that from the get-go. Like my far right chair over here is on sliders and all the cords are pretty long, so I can just slide that chair out of the way and walk back there. It's not, they're not hooked together, so these don't snap together or anything. They're just all sitting together like that. But actually all the chairs are on sliders, but that one has really long cords for the transducer and the power cord, really all it is. But I made sure the cords were long enough I can slide it completely out of the way. All my equipment rack, everything back there now is on wheels, so it just easily rolls out, and all my cords are plenty long enough. You know, the first time, you know, you're squeezing behind something because you can only, you know, everybody's been back there with the flashlight.
We've all been back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been back there with the manual, looking down and going, okay, there's HDMI 1, there's HDMI 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Or trying to take a picture with your phone to see.
Done that.
And, you know, it never fails. Sometimes there's just, for whatever reason, everything doesn't want to communicate properly, and you'll have to unplug an HDMI cord and plug it back in, and that's all. Like sometimes things just get out of sync, and that's very rare now that I've replaced all my cables and equipment now to the point that I really don't have a lot of handshake issues. But it seems like in the past, you know, you buy the cheap cables and, you know, no picture, but you have sound or something, you got to unplug the cable, plug it back in. So, you know, buy quality cables up front, you know, not ridiculously expensive, but quality cables, you know. Trying to buy a $5 HDMI cable is probably not going to
That's 100 foot. You're like,
it's
probably not going to work.
So now I have everything, pretty quality cables and connectors and everything, and accessibility was a big thing that I really didn't take into consideration, because you're thinking, I'll never move that. And I would probably, the only thing I would upgrade if I was going to someday would probably be amplifiers, and the only reason I would do that wouldn't necessarily be for sound quality. I'm pretty happy with how everything sounds here. There's no issues there, but I would probably rather go to like an all-in-one amp, maybe an 11-channel amp, so I don't have, you know, two just massive amps back there. I mean, it's cool there, but you know, there's almost 150 pounds worth of amplifiers in there, and I actually have channels to spare. I don't need that much. And it would free up some rack space, you know, just to be able to put some other components in the rack that are not in a rack right now. You know, I have this table back there, so I'd consider getting a taller rack, but that would, you know, it'd mess up all this decor back here. And so, you know, a lot of that's just planning ahead. You know, there's some things that I would have done differently, but you know, one of the big ones is accessibility. You know, make sure you can get to everything easily.
Totally agree with that.
So a lot of people struggle with that. You see on the forums all the time. You know, it's like trying to work on equipment. So,
for sure. You have proven that you can build a sweet, I mean, it's a 120-inch screen, projection, massive subwoofers, theater seating. Is it limited? Yeah, we only have one row. You know, is it limited in the size screen? Yes. Is it awesome? Does it sound phenomenal? Does it look beautiful? 100%. And so I love what you've done. I love the decor. You've just done so many things well in this, and I really hope that this video has provided inspiration to you guys that are considering doing something like this in your home theater. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, because we're in the middle of the Florida home theater tour, so we've got a bunch more home theaters just like this coming your way. Again, we want to give a big thanks to Silver Ticket for sponsoring this video. And as always, you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you in the next video.